I always expected it to be fairly middle of the road, fairly, well, if you like, uncontroversial, and I think of it as that. I think of it as a series of tweaks, most of which are quite worthwhile, but which won't really have very much effect on business as usual. And that's partly because the problems are very hard to deal with. The problems are, the problems that people feel are that a range of misjudgments have been made, and I think some of those misjudgments might have not been made with better processes, but other misjudgments simply reflect the fact that the judgments that the board has to make are very difficult.
So will then having a dual board structure result in better forecasting?
I suppose the quick answer is yes, but I'm not sure how much. I think to really take... the problem with forecasting, I think, is not so much a technical problem. There are some technical problems where wrong models are used, but it's more... there's a more general problem, which is groupthink, effectively. And groupthink, I think of as such a powerful enemy that one never gets on top of it. It's one of those things we should think of as something that we always should be fighting against.
So do you think the Reserve Bank Board in its current structure is subject to groupthink? Is that a big problem for the current RBA board?
Yes, it's a problem, and it's a problem, I would say, in pretty much... let me be a little confronting and say I expect it's a problem at the ABC. It's a problem in any large hierarchical organisation. So if you really want to improve that, you have to think about that in a pretty hard-headed sort of way. But the changes that have been made at the margins are welcome ones.
Philip Lowe took exception to the review panel's findings that the board members don't have the experience to challenge him on rates decisions. Do you think attempts to make the Monetary Policy Board more diverse will work?
No, I think that if you really want to get stuck into groupthink, you can have a look at the kinds of things that some successful financial companies have pursued. One of the things they do, they have prediction markets inside their organisation. So you start finding out who actually is building up a track record of being a better forecaster. It's those kinds of things. Again, the other thing that I guess I'm a little disappointed of central banks all around the world, these central banks have independence. They could be running an Australia-wide, a worldwide forecasting competition. They could be holding open forecasting. They could open up all their models, and they could start tracking. They could start finding super forecasters. They could start finding the people who don't buy the groupthink.
Groupthink aside, what do you think would make a difference at the RBA to achieve better outcomes for the economy?
Well, I think we should remind ourselves how little we know and how little experts know. So the report talks about a number of errors of judgment. The judgments that I would like to think could have been made better are judgments where we didn't try to get to full employment aggressively. The report talks about this as the low inflation period where we underperformed, where the Reserve Bank delivered below target inflation. And then I think Phil Lowe, I remember thinking at the time, and this is a very important test for people rather than criticise with hindsight, I remember thinking at the time when Philip Lowe told us that they were very unlikely to raise rates before 2024, I thought to myself, well, markets usually overshoot at the peak and the trough, and here I think my guess is that the Reserve Bank is overshooting, and that became quite obvious within less than a third of the time that Philip Lowe had sketched out.
Do you think Phil Lowe deserves another term?
No, I don't. I think that the governor was always an internal product of this organisation. There are a number of things that have happened on his watch that are by no means scandalous, but I think they were not well handled. And generally speaking, as Christopher Joy has said, and as a number of people have observed, the bank is too insular. And for that reason, I think it makes sense to try to get... and Philip Lowe's had a good run. I wish him well. But I think that's a perfectly reasonable amount of time as chair, and I think it would be good to have another one.
Nicholas Gruen, thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks, Alicia.